What can happen when a simple act of kindness transforms into a life lesson? On a sunny morning in New York, Lauren, a 30-year-old woman, encounters a homeless man while rushing to work. Seeing him sitting on the ground with an empty gaze and a worn blanket, she feels an inexplicable urge to help him. Without hesitation, she decides to buy him coffee and a snack. What Lauren doesn't imagine is that this simple gesture will trigger a series of events that will make her reconsider everything she believed about empathy and human connection. Lauren had always been a career-focused woman. With a job at a marketing company, she strived to climb up in life, but constantly felt lost and alone. Raised in a family that valued success above all else, she carried the weight of expectations, feeling vulnerable and insecure about her future. The daily stress and pressure to stand out in a competitive world left her exhausted, and what were once vibrant dreams now seemed distant and unreachable. That day, while the sun shone and people rushed by, Lauren stopped in front of the homeless man named Tom. He was a middle-aged man with a deep gaze that seemed to hide stories of pain and resilience. After offering him coffee, Lauren sat beside him, feeling a sudden and inexplicable connection. During their conversation, Tom shared fragments of his life, his struggles, and how he ended up on the street. Lauren was touched by his words and by how he could still smile despite everything. But when Tom handed her a note minutes later, the atmosphere changed. The paper was crumpled and the handwriting was shaky, but his words carried an emotional weight that Lauren couldn't ignore. As she read, tears began rolling down her face, revealing a vulnerability she had hidden for so long. The note contained a message of hope and a reflection about life, triggering a change in her heart. This defining moment not only altered Lauren's perspective on what truly matters, but also made her question her priorities and the journey she had followed until then. As she said goodbye to Tom, she felt that something inside her had changed forever. The encounter with this unlikely man offered her a new vision of compassion and human connection, challenging her to rethink her ambitions and the true essence of happiness. Lauren's life was about to go through an unexpected restart, and Tom's note would become the catalyst for a journey of self-discovery, overcoming challenges, and perhaps an unusual friendship that would change their lives forever. What would she do with this new perspective? Could kindness really transform her life and Tom's? After the memorable encounter with Tom, Lauren returned home with the note tucked in her purse. His words echoed in her mind, and a new sense of purpose began to bloom within her. However, the reality of her daily life was quick to impose itself. The next day, as she entered the company's meeting room, the pressure for performance was palpable. Her colleagues were so focused on numbers and goals that any conversation about empathy and human connection seemed distant, almost unreal. During the meeting, her boss, a demanding and relentless man, highlighted the disappointing numbers of a recent project Lauren had worked hard on. He didn't hesitate to criticize the team, pointing out failures and suggesting that radical changes were necessary to make up for lost time. Lauren, feeling exposed and unprotected, remembered Tom's words about the importance of looking beyond appearances and how life could be more than just financial results. However, while trying to focus on proposing solutions, a feeling of inadequacy enveloped her again. The pressure for results was eroding her confidence, and the idea that she could have a more meaningful life seemed increasingly distant. When the meeting ended, her colleagues greeted her superficially, but Lauren realized that the connection she sought was still out of reach. Loneliness accompanied her, and the joy she had felt helping Tom seemed like a distant echo. In the days that followed, Lauren decided to go back and find Tom. She wanted to better understand his story and perhaps help him in more meaningful ways. When she arrived at the place where she had first met him, her heart raced. She didn't know what to expect. The place was full of people, but Tom was nowhere in sight. Anxiety grew inside her. What would happen if she never saw him again? What could she really do for him? While walking, a young man approached, one of the many who usually passed by there. He introduced himself as Jake and revealed that he knew Tom. Jake was an artist who also faced difficulties but seemed to have a resilient spirit. He told Lauren that Tom had been a teacher and that, before losing everything, he had a life full of promise. Lauren was intrigued. Tom's story was far beyond what she had imagined. While they talked, Jake mentioned that Tom faced new challenges, including health problems and the constant struggle to find shelter. This information hit Lauren like a blow. The idea that Tom was not only fighting against poverty, but also against illness and loneliness left her distressed. She wanted to help him but didn't know how. Jake, noticing her determination, suggested that she could try to find him in local shelters where he usually stayed. This information lit a flame of hope inside Lauren. She couldn't simply ignore Tom's situation and return to her life as if nothing had happened. However, while trying to organize herself for this new mission, Lauren faced an internal dilemma. Her career was at stake and a new presentation was approaching. She knew she should dedicate herself to that, but the idea of prioritizing her career instead of helping someone who really needed her made her feel guilty. This internal struggle began to consume her energy, testing her emotional strength. She was torn between what society expected of her and what her heart was telling her. During this time, Lauren began to distance herself from some colleagues who didn't understand her new focus. They saw her as someone who should dedicate herself solely to professional success. Some interactions became unpleasant, with insinuations and malicious comments about her dedication to work. This made her question whether she was making the right choice. She felt she was changing, but would her colleagues support her in this transition? The pressure to conform was strong, and the fear of failure haunted her. Despite these difficulties, Lauren decided she needed to find Tom. The determination grew inside her, and she was willing to face the challenges that would arise. Along the journey, Lauren realized that her life was transforming into something new. What had seemed to be a simple act of kindness was becoming a search for purpose and genuine connection. However, the path ahead promised to be full of obstacles, and Tom's story would lead her to confront her deepest fears and rediscover the strength that had always been within her. Lauren's determination to help Tom led her down an unexpected path. In the days that followed, she began visiting the shelters Jake had mentioned. The first time she entered one, she felt a mixture of nervousness and hope. The walls were cold and grey, and the smell of disinfectant mixed with the lack of comfort was overwhelming. As she walked down the corridor, the tired and discouraged faces of the people made her realize the harsh reality that many faced. Every look seemed to ask for help, and this affected her deeply. Despite Lauren's willingness, the search for Tom wasn't easy. In the first few days, she had no success. The pressure at work was increasing, and her boss was pushing her with tight deadlines and ever higher goals. Lauren felt that with every moment dedicated to the shelter, she was moving away from what society expected of her. Meetings became an emotional battlefield. Her colleagues, who were once just co-workers, now seemed to look at her with disapproval. The implicit disdain in their looks made her question if she was making the right choice in trying to connect with Tom. The nights when Lauren returned home were lonely. She felt trapped between two worlds, the security of work and the uncertainty and vulnerability that accompanied her attempts to help Tom. On one of these nights, looking in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman she was becoming. The stress and guilt were visible on her face, and she wondered if she was really making a difference or just putting herself in unnecessary situations. Finally, after weeks of searching, Lauren received a tip that Tom might be at a specific shelter. With her heart racing, she decided that, regardless of what happened, she needed to find him. When she arrived at the shelter, the environment was more welcoming than the previous ones, but still full of challenges. As she walked among the makeshift beds and dining tables, anxiety overwhelmed her. What if Tom didn't want to see her? What if he had withdrawn, disillusioned with the idea of help? At last, she spotted Tom. He was sitting at a table with a lost look in his eyes. As she approached, Lauren felt a lump in her throat. The man who once seemed so full of life was now marked by sadness. When Tom recognized her, a mixture of surprise and distrust crossed his face. "Lauren?" he asked, almost as if he couldn't believe she was there. Sitting beside him, Lauren explained her efforts and what she had discovered about his life. Tom listened attentively, but his expression was skeptical. He had grown accustomed to not trusting people's intentions. His reluctance to accept help was palpable, and it hurt Lauren. The connection she had hoped for wasn't materializing. The words of encouragement she had rehearsed in her mind seemed insufficient in the face of the sadness he carried. While trying to convince Tom to open up about his difficulties, she began to realize that her own life was deteriorating. Work was suffocating her, and the pressure to perform exemplarily was intensifying. With each new criticism from her boss, the feeling of failure grew. The balance between helping Tom and staying relevant at the company was becoming increasingly difficult. She felt like she was walking on a tightrope, about to fall at any moment. Weeks passed, and the relationship between Lauren and Tom seemed to be at a standstill. She tried to show him that help existed, but he was trapped in his own world of pain and distrust. This led her to question if she was making the right choice by investing so much time in him. Doubt began to infiltrate her mind. Was this fight for Tom just a way to escape her own problems? This reflection made her feel even more lost. But amid this emotional storm, Lauren found comfort in Jake. He became an unexpected friend, someone who understood her struggle. Jake encouraged her to be patient with Tom and not give up on him. He shared his own experiences, revealing how art had helped him deal with his difficulties. This friendship brought new energy to Lauren, who began to realize that the journey of helping Tom wasn't just about him, but also about her own transformation. However, the company's pressure didn't decrease. The presentation date was approaching, and with it, the fear of failure. Lauren was torn between her desire to help Tom and the need to excel at work. The tension consumed her, and in a moment of weakness, she let herself be swayed by a colleague's discouraging words. "Why do you care so much about him? You have your career to think about," they said, and those words hit her like an arrow. While preparing for the presentation, insecurity took over Lauren. She couldn't concentrate. Her mind was full of doubts about her choices. What really mattered? What should she prioritize? These questions tormented her, and amid this chaos, she began to realize that the journey to find Tom was, in fact, a reflection of her own struggle for meaning in a world that seemed so superficial. Lauren was at a crossroads, struggling to find a balance between her work responsibilities and her desire to help Tom. As the days went by, the pressure increased, but the connection with Tom continued to weigh on her heart. She was so focused on rescuing someone who seemed lost that she began to neglect her own life. Lonely nights became routine, and the company's stress accumulated, making her feel increasingly distant from who she really was. One night, while trying to prepare for the presentation that could define her future at the company, Lauren's phone rang. It was Jake. He seemed worried and asked to meet with her. When she arrived at the cafe, she found him with a grave expression. "Lauren, I saw Tom today. He was in a very bad situation," Jake said, his voice trembling. Lauren's heart raced. "What happened?" she asked, anxiety growing in her chest. Jake explained that Tom had been involved in a fight and was now hospitalized due to injuries. Jake's words seemed to echo in Lauren's mind like a bell. The reality of what was happening hit her like a wave. She felt guilty for not having done more for him, for not being present when he needed her most. The revelation shook her deeply. Tom wasn't just a rescue project. He was a real person, with fears and wounds that she didn't fully understand. As Jake spoke, Lauren realized that her struggle to help Tom was overshadowing her own internal battle. She remembered all the times she felt lost and alone, facing her own battles in the corporate environment. What really mattered? What did it mean to be successful? She had been so focused on trying to save Tom that she forgot to take care of herself. Tears began to roll down her face, and she felt as if she was on the verge of collapse. "I need to go see him," she said, determined. Jake nodded, but there was concern in his look. "Lauren, I know you care. but you also need to take care of yourself. You can't lose yourself in this fight." Jake's words hit her like an arrow, and she realized he was right. She had been so focused on helping Tom that she had neglected her own mental and emotional health. On the way to the hospital, Lauren's mind was a storm. She remembered how she had strayed from her dreams and aspirations in pursuit of approval and success at the company. What did it really mean to be successful, to be recognized by her boss, or to make a difference in someone's life? As she entered the hospital, a wave of anxiety enveloped her, but also a renewed determination to face her fears. Seeing Tom lying in bed, his fragility shook her. He was pale and hurt, but there was still a spark of life in his eyes. When he recognized her, a look of confusion and pain crossed his face. "Lauren?" he mumbled, almost not believing she was there. She approached, holding his hand. "I'm here, Tom. I'm sorry I wasn't with you before." In that moment, something changed inside Lauren. Her struggle to help Tom wasn't just about rescuing him. It was about rediscovering herself. As they talked, she realized that Tom's vulnerability reflected her own insecurities. They were fighting in different worlds, but the battles were the same. Lauren understood that to help Tom, she would need to help herself first. The failures she feared weren't weaknesses, but opportunities for growth. After an emotional conversation, Tom began to open up about his struggles. He revealed how he felt trapped in a cycle of despair and how the help he had always rejected was, in fact, what he needed most. Lauren listened attentively, feeling that each word brought him closer to her. It was as if a bridge was being built between them, a connection that transcended their respective pains. When Lauren left the hospital, a new understanding enveloped her. She couldn't save Tom alone. It was a journey they both would have to travel together. This experience made her reconsider what was truly important in her life. The pressure from work was still there, but now she had a new purpose. Helping Tom wouldn't take her away from her career, but could, in fact, enrich her life in ways she never imagined. The change in her perspective made her realize that true success wasn't just about achieving goals, but also about building meaningful relationships and supporting each other through difficulties. Lauren knew this journey would be challenging, but she was ready to face it, not just for Tom, but for herself. She had found a new meaning, and with it, the courage to continue. Lauren left the hospital with a mixture of relief and new determination. The conversation she had with Tom remained etched in her mind. She felt different, as if she had left a heavy part of herself behind. But as the days went by, the reality of her life began to impose itself again. Work awaited her with the same demands as before, and the pressure seemed even more intense now that she had decided to commit to Tom's recovery. The next day, while preparing for an important meeting, Lauren felt anxiety taking over. Jake's words echoed in her mind. "You need to take care of yourself." But how could she do that when the weight of responsibility seemed so great? She looked in the mirror and saw a determined woman, but also a tired one. It was difficult to find balance. The phone rang and it was Jake again. He knew she had gone to the hospital and wanted to know how she was doing. "Jake, I feel so torn. I want to help Tom, but work doesn't stop. I'm afraid I won't be able to handle everything," Lauren confessed, her voice tense. Jake listened attentively. "Lauren, you can't be everything to everyone. Your mental health is just as important as the help you want to give Tom. Try to set aside time just for yourself, even if it's only 15 minutes a day." She thanked Jake, and after hanging up, decided she needed to take a break. During lunch, she put aside her emails and went for a walk. The fresh air seemed to revitalize her. She realized that by stepping away for a moment, she could think more clearly. The weight of the world wasn't just on her shoulders. She also needed to be present for herself. But upon returning to the office, reality awaited her. Her boss called her in to discuss a new project, demanding her complete commitment. Lauren tried to explain that she was dealing with personal issues, but he didn't seem to understand. The demands only increased, and she felt as if she was being pulled in opposite directions. As she left the room, tears of frustration rolled down her face. What she really wanted was to be a source of support for Tom. But work wouldn't leave her in peace. In the days that followed, Lauren began visiting Tom regularly in the hospital. Each encounter made her feel stronger, but also more concerned. He was struggling to recover, and she wished he could see the beauty in his journey, even in the difficulties. Over time, Tom began to open up more. "I don't know how to get out of this hole, Lauren. Sometimes it feels like I'm trapped," he confessed during one of her visits. Lauren held his hand and replied, "I understand, Tom. I felt trapped for a while too, but we need to find a way together." That connection was growing stronger, but it also brought new challenges. While helping Tom deal with his emotions, Lauren began to feel overwhelmed with her own. The deep conversations, they had made her reflect on her own life, and she wondered if she was doing enough to take care of herself. One night, after a long conversation with Tom, Lauren sat on her couch and allowed herself to feel the exhaustion. The tears came again, and she realized she couldn't carry everything alone. She needed support, someone who could help her deal with her own struggle. That's when she decided she should seek a therapist. It wasn't easy for her to admit she needed help, but she understood that the journey of caring for Tom also required her to take care of herself. The next day, she made a call. When speaking with the therapist, she felt a wave of relief, knowing there was a safe space to share her concerns. It was a small step, but an important one. Throughout the week, Lauren began to establish a new routine. She set aside moments of the day to meditate and reflect, and started writing in a journal. These new practices helped her process her emotions and better understand what was happening with her and Tom. While Tom struggled to recover, Lauren began to rebuild herself too. Work was still challenging, but she allowed herself to say no when necessary and prioritize her own needs. A new strength was emerging within her, and she realized that, like Tom, she was also allowing herself to be vulnerable. The journey wasn't free of obstacles, but Lauren was learning to navigate them more consciously. Each day, the connection with Tom grew stronger. They were in this fight together, and Lauren felt that just as Tom needed her, she needed him too. Together, they were discovering not only how to face difficulties, but also how to support each other in their respective journeys. And as Lauren allowed herself to be more authentic, she realized she was getting closer, not only to Tom, but also to who she really was. Lauren was at a turning point in her life. The weight she had carried for so long seemed an unbearable burden, and with each passing day, she felt more trapped between her responsibilities and her emotions. Tom's struggle to recover reflected her own internal battle. However, she was beginning to understand that help wasn't a sign of weakness, but rather a form of strength. As she continued to visit Tom, Lauren began to realize the importance of opening up and sharing her own vulnerabilities. During one of their meetings, she decided to talk about the work pressure and anxiety that accompanied her. Tom, who had always been an attentive listener, recognized her struggle. "Sometimes you just need to stop and breathe, don't you?" he said, and those words echoed deeply within her. It was true. She had forgotten to take care of herself amid the chaos. The decision to seek a therapist was the first significant step Lauren took in her journey of self-discovery. As she entered the office, she felt a mixture of nervousness and hope. The therapist welcomed her with a warm smile, and as Lauren began to talk about her feelings and fears, a sense of relief began to settle in. She was being heard, and that made all the difference. The therapist helped her see that her emotions were valid and that she didn't need to face everything alone. As the weeks passed, Lauren began to explore her own needs. Meditation and journal writing became part of her daily routine. She rediscovered the power of reflecting on her experiences and emotions. This helped her understand that the anxiety she felt wasn't a sign of weakness, but a natural response to the pressures she faced. With this, she began to trust herself more and accept that she needed space to grow. While dedicated to her own emotional recovery, Lauren also saw Tom's progress. He was striving to overcome his challenges, and somehow this inspired her. They became mutual support, a safe harbor in the storms they faced. Lauren realized their friendship had evolved into something deeper, and their shared vulnerability only strengthened the bond they had. Work was still a source of stress, but Lauren felt better prepared to handle it. She learned to set boundaries, to say no when necessary, and to prioritize her own needs. Her boss, who once seemed like an unrelenting figure, didn't intimidate her as much anymore. Lauren began to see success differently. For her, true success wasn't just about meeting all work demands, but also finding balance and satisfaction in her personal life. Tom, for his part, was making progress in his recovery, but there were still difficult days. During one visit, he said, "I don't know if I can overcome this." Lauren, with the wisdom she had gained from her own struggles, replied, "No one needs to overcome everything at once. The important thing is to take one step at a time." That conversation not only helped Tom see his situation from a different perspective, but also reaffirmed to Lauren that her experiences and learnings were valuable. Over time, Lauren realized that life was made of ups and downs, and that true wealth lay in the connections she cultivated and the lessons she learned. Each challenge she faced made her stronger and more aware of what really mattered. She began to apply the lessons she learned, not only in her life, but also in helping Tom find a new purpose in his journey. Lauren's transformation wasn't instantaneous, but gradual. She learned that personal growth wasn't about being perfect, but about being authentic. With each passing day, she felt more connected to herself and those around her. Her friendship with Tom blossomed in a safe space where both could be vulnerable and support each other. Lauren now understood that life was a series of new beginnings. Each failure was an opportunity to learn and grow. Her worldview expanded, and she began to embrace uncertainty with a new understanding. Life wasn't just about achieving goals, but about the path one travels and the people one meets along the journey. And on this path, Lauren was finally finding her place, full of hope and determination to move forward. The day was cloudy, reflecting the internal turmoil Lauren faced. While preparing for an important presentation at work, anxiety dominated her, bringing to the surface all the insecurities she had tried to leave behind. It was her chance to show her boss that she was capable, but at the same time, the fear of failure seemed to crush her. Deep down, she knew that what was at stake wasn't just her professional performance, but her entire perception of worth and success. Upon arriving at the office, the atmosphere was tense. Co-workers rushed from side to side, and the sound of keyboards filled the air. Lauren felt her heart race as she headed to the meeting room. Her boss's critical gaze awaited her, and the pressure seemed almost palpable. As she entered the room, she sat down, feeling everyone's eyes on her. What should have been a moment of confidence had turned into a nightmare. The presentation began, and Lauren's voice trembled. She tried to remember the breathing techniques she had learned, but the words seemed to slip away. Looking at her boss's face, she saw an expression that mixed disinterest and disappointment. Despair took over, and in a moment of weakness, she interrupted the presentation. "I'm sorry, I'm not well," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know if I'm the right person for this." A heavy silence hung in the room. She felt the warmth of tears in her eyes, but didn't want to cry in front of everyone. What was supposed to be a demonstration of her capability had become an exposure of her vulnerabilities. Shame dominated her, and she thought about running away, hiding. Then suddenly, she remembered her conversations with Tom, the words they shared about accepting vulnerability as part of being human. She took a deep breath and, instead of running away, decided to use that moment to open up. "I've been struggling with anxiety and pressure at work. Sometimes it makes me feel like I'm not good enough." The sincerity in her voice surprised everyone in the room. A murmur of empathy began to arise among her colleagues. Her boss, who had previously seemed like a distant figure, now looked at her with understanding. "Lauren," he began, "we all face challenges. What matters is how we deal with them." That validation had a powerful effect. Her boss's words were like a balm for her emotional wounds. She realized she wasn't alone in this battle. A colleague, who had always seemed confident, raised his hand and also shared his struggle with anxiety. Others joined in, and within minutes, the room transformed into a safe space for vulnerability. Lauren felt her heart warm as she realized that by sharing her weaknesses, she was helping others feel more comfortable with their own struggles. The atmosphere changed completely. The presentation that began with fear and insecurity became a conversation about overcoming challenges and mutual support. Lauren found strength in the empathy being shared. The pressure that had seemed unbearable before was now an opportunity for connection. At the end of the meeting, instead of criticism, she received applause and words of encouragement. The sense of relief was palpable. That day, Lauren didn't just overcome a professional challenge, she also redefined her concept of success. It wasn't just about being perfect or meeting all expectations, but about being authentic and connecting with others on a human level. The friendship she had cultivated with Tom grew even stronger as they both learned that true strength lies in vulnerability. Leaving the office, Lauren felt lighter. She had faced her greatest fear and instead of being destroyed, had emerged stronger and more confident. Life wasn't just a series of achievements, but a journey shared with those she loved. The lessons she had learned along the way were fundamental to her transformation, and now she was ready to face any challenge that came her way. Her friendship with Tom had become a pillar in her life, and together they would continue to support each other, always remembering that true value wasn't just in achievements, but in the connections they formed along the journey. Lauren smiled, thinking about everything she had learned and how, with each new beginning, she became a little stronger. After the meeting, the atmosphere in the office had changed significantly. Lauren felt surrounded by a new climate of understanding and support. Her colleagues' encouraging comments still echoed in her mind, and a sense of relief accompanied her as she returned to her desk. Tom, who had watched everything closely, approached her with a smile. "You were amazing, Lauren. I never thought a presentation could turn into something so powerful," he said, with a sparkle in his eyes. "Thank you, Tom. I really didn't expect things to take this turn. I thought I was going to fail and everyone would judge me," Lauren confessed, still a bit dazed by what had happened. "Actually, you did exactly the opposite. By opening up, you allowed others to show their vulnerability too. That's a great demonstration of leadership," he replied, admiring her courage. As days passed, Lauren began to notice subtle changes in her work environment. Conversations about mental health and emotional support had become common among colleagues. People started sharing their own stories, and the break room turned into a space for dialogue and empathy. Lauren, who previously felt isolated in her struggles, now felt part of a community. She realized that her vulnerability had created a domino effect, encouraging others to open up as well. At home, conversations with her family became deeper. Lauren decided to share with her parents what she had faced and what she had learned in the meeting. "I was so worried about appearing strong that I didn't realize strength can lie in being honest about my insecurities," she explained with a steady voice. Her parents listened attentively, and her mother, with tears in her eyes, said, "Lauren, you've always been strong in our eyes, but knowing that you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable makes you even more admirable." These words touched Lauren's heart. She realized that by sharing her struggles, she wasn't just freeing herself from the weight she carried, but also inspiring those around her to be more honest about their own battles. This made her reflect on the importance of empathy and mutual support. At work, Lauren's boss called a meeting to discuss the team's mental health. He praised her courage and explained how important it was for everyone to feel safe expressing their difficulties. He also proposed creating a support group where employees could meet regularly to share experiences and offer support. Lauren felt a mixture of pride and gratitude as she realized that her vulnerability had triggered a positive change in the work environment. "You really made a difference, Lauren," said Tom, as they had coffee together on a sunny day. "And what's most amazing is that you didn't just help yourself, but all of us too. It was a learning process, Tom. I realized I don't need to have all the answers. Sometimes we just need to be truthful and support each other," Lauren replied, smiling. Over time, Lauren continued to grow. She enrolled in a public speaking course to improve her communication skills, not just for herself, but also to help others who felt the same insecurity she had. The support group at work became a space of empowerment, where everyone felt comfortable sharing their stories, fears, and achievements. Lauren reflected on how her life had changed. The struggles that once seemed heavy were now part of her journey. She understood that vulnerability wasn't weakness, but rather a bridge that connected her to others. Each day she felt stronger and more confident in her ability to face the challenges that arose in her path. Her friendship with Tom flourished, and together they became advocates for mental health at work. Lauren knew that even in the face of new challenges, she had a friend by her side who would support her, and this encouraged her to keep fighting and be true to herself. As months passed, Lauren saw her life transform in ways she had never imagined. She had become an advocate for mental health at work, inspiring others to open up and share their struggles. The atmosphere in the office was now marked by empathy and mutual support, and Lauren felt more connected than ever with her colleagues. Her friendship with Tom had deepened, and together they organized workshops and talks, promoting the importance of talking about mental health. Lauren reflected on her journey. The fear that once paralyzed her had now transformed into courage. Every time a colleague opened up in a support group meeting, she felt warmth in her heart. That shared vulnerability made her realize she wasn't alone in her struggles. Achievements that once seemed small were now significant milestones of personal growth. She had learned that true strength wasn't in hiding weaknesses, but in recognizing them and using them as a bridge to connect with others. One morning, while having coffee with Tom, Lauren received an unexpected message from her former boss, inviting her to speak at a conference about leadership and mental health. The invitation excited her, but also made her apprehensive. "What will I say? Am I really qualified for this?" she thought. However, the confidence she had built encouraged her to accept the challenge. At the conference, Lauren had the opportunity to share her story. With her heart racing, she spoke about her insecurities and how vulnerability can be a source of strength. The audience was attentive, and with each word, she felt she was making a difference. Afterward, many approached her to offer congratulations and share their own experiences. It was a moment of pure connection. However, upon returning home, something unexpected happened. Lauren received a call from her mother with a trembling voice. "Lauren, your father has been hospitalized. He had a heart attack." Lauren's world collapsed in that instant. All her growth and self-confidence seemed small in the face of the fear that overtook her. The vulnerability she had embraced now became even more real. As she prepared for the hospital, Lauren realized that the lessons she had learned weren't just for the workplace, but also for life's most challenging moments. When she arrived at the hospital, she found her mother, who was as frightened as she was. But instead of giving in to despair, Lauren took the initiative. "Mom, let's support each other. We need to be strong for one another." As they united, they realized that the vulnerability they had learned to value at work could be a pillar of strength in times of crisis. Over time, Lauren's father recovered. This experience brought a new depth to their relationship, and she felt grateful to be present and support her family. Life wasn't perfect, but Lauren knew she had the ability to face challenges with courage and love. Reflecting on everything she had experienced, Lauren understood that life is made of ups and downs, and that true wealth lies in the connections we create and the love we share. Each experience, good or bad, had shaped her and taught her about the importance of empathy and mutual support. Now, Lauren invited everyone around her to reflect on their own journeys. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Share your stories, because they can inspire others. Together, we can build a more caring and understanding world. And so she encouraged people to share their experiences, reminding everyone that change begins with the courage to open up. If you've also gone through challenging moments, share your story in the comments. Your voice can help create a space of support and understanding. And don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue bringing more content that touches hearts and inspires transformation. The time to act is now, and your experience might be the key to helping someone on their journey.